కేంద్ర మంత్రివర్యులు శ్రీమతి మీనాక్షి లేఖి గారు కేంద్ర ప్రభుత్వంలో విదేశాంగ శాఖ అలాగే సాంస్కృతిక శాఖ కల్చర్ మినిస్ట్రీ ఆఫ్ కల్చర్ వీటిలో మంత్రిగా ఉంటూ సహాయ మంత్రిగా ఉంటూ గత 10 సంవత్సరాలుగా న్యూఢిల్లీ పార్లమెంటరీ కాన్స్టిట్యున్సీ నుంచి లోక్సభకు ఎన్నికై అంతకుముందు అనేక సంవత్సరాలు భారతీయ జనతా పార్టీలో జాతీయ అధికార ప్రతినిధిగా అలాగే ఒక ప్రముఖ న్యాయవాదిగా పనిచేస్తూ విశేష సేవలు అందించారు. సో ఈ పత్రికా సమావేశాన్ని ఉద్దేశించి మేడం మీనాక్షి లేఖి గారిని మాట్లాడవలసిందిగా కోరుతున్నాను. ధన్యవాదాలు.
धन्यवाद जीवीएल जी. सहोदरा सहोदरी को नमस्कार. Friends, you'll be happy to know that India has progressed and gone ahead like never before in past 9.5 years. The rate of development and the rate at which inclusion has happened in India is something which makes every Indian proud. And just to one very important question which comes from many developed nations is that how come in past 9.5 years you have achieved the kind of speed you have achieved in developing digital infrastructure. In digital infrastructure today, we are world's #1. Whether it's fintech or it's India Stack or it's taking services to a common man, transaction of digital payments through our phones rather than cards is something which showcases strength of India and Indians. And what began as Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile inclusion process, which Prime Minister was very keen to work at right from the beginning, was being laughed at by many in the opposition, that people are uneducated, people speak different languages, how will this be possible, and people who are selling their vegetables and coconuts and garlands, how will they manage all this? But we have done it, and we are an example to the world at large that what it means to develop public goods through digital infrastructure and a very safe method of transacting money, which is through QR codes, which is from very small shopkeeper, economically vulnerable section to the highest paying executive. Everyone is today transacting through telephones. And this has gone to showcase that in independent India, after 70 plus years of independence, the inclusion process people talked about but did not know how to achieve. And we have showcased through good governance of Mr. Modi that good governance and inclusion is not only a word but can be achieved, and very fast it can be achieved. We are transacting today a few billion worth of rupees every single day, and the best part is about 50% of the global digital transactions are happening in India. Some countries like China would be doing about 2 billion, US will be doing about 3 billion, Indians are doing about 12 billion. That is what Indian economy is. with digital transactions. And I must take you back, we have brought in transparency also. Can you imagine in 2014, India was a country which had about 120 crore people, but we only had little less than 12 crore bank accounts. Less than 12 crore bank accounts out of 120 crore people. And many will be surprised that many families, households, will have 3 or 4 bank accounts. So if there were families which had 3 or 4 bank accounts, majority of the families did not have a single bank account. So opening 52 crore bank accounts in just about 4 months, making that as a foundation of inclusion process, financial inclusion, servicing through the direct benefit. Now, direct benefit, we all know, has helped in alleviating people's life by removing corruption. Because I remember one of the former Prime Minister used to say, if government of India sends 100 rupees, by the time it reaches the account holder or who needs, it remains only 15 rupees. And today, government run by Mr. Modi sends 100 rupees. By the time person takes the money out, it becomes 110 rupees. For the simple reason that the banking facilities would have given some interest over the money which has reached the person's banking account. So, process of inclusion has brought in not just transparency but efficiency into the financial system. All the small vendors, the fruit seller, the juice maker, others have also got under Swanidhi Yojana banking facilities, and through these banking facilities they can procure loans, they get benefits, and they get to be helped directly by the government rather than by the intermediaries. In terms of inclusion, we've also seen that how Kisan Samman Nidhi, because all said and done, Andhra Pradesh is also an agro-economy. There is a huge population of farmers and horticulturists, and also people who work in the fishing department. The fisheries by itself, which is part of agriculture, today fisheries is a separate department that they also get benefited by all the central schemes. So blue economy is something Government of India is working very deeply on, and many coastal states including Andhra Pradesh have benefited out of all those schemes. So this is how inclusion worked in 9.5 years, and everybody who I have come across keeps on wondering that what people take 50 years to accomplish, you've done it in 6 years. And all that is indigenous system which India has built in the area of fintech, financial inclusion and technology being used simultaneously. I must say that when G20 happened, every Indian, no matter which party's government was there, no matter which side of the political divide the person belonged to, but G20 made every Indian proud. And that pride in Indians is not only for the Indians living in India, but all the NRIs, diaspora which lives in other countries, also felt very proud. Nobody had to hide their identity. People with great pride today say we are Indians and this is my blue passport. And that blue passport's value in the eyes of people has only increased for the simple reason that assertion of unity, that assertion of a sense of pride is what Indians have started to look upon themselves. And that sense is something which has brought all of us together. G20 even internationally, was a huge success. It was a huge success because India, when took the presidency, brought in the right perspective of Global South. Global South was not a term which was looked at with respect, but was looked at by the developed nations as less developing economies. But India brought in a sense of pride even to Global South, put them on the table that when we are talking of global economy, we must also talk about the people who have lagged behind. So same approach as the approach we took within the country of bringing everyone onto the table, including everyone in the conversations, that if India has to do well, every district has to do well. And thus the concept of aspirational district was evolved within our domestic parameter. Similar to that if world has to be a peaceful place, if world has to get ahead, if world economy has to progress, then progress necessarily has to include the ones who got left behind. So Global South became the agenda for G20. Otherwise, G20 was a group of top performing 20 economies. But top performing 20 economies cannot succeed until and unless the ones who are left behind are brought on the table and their concerns, which are going to be impacted the most by the economic policies, have to be heard. So Global South was the agenda which Government of India brought forward in G20, and thus Global South conversation started to wear in terms of resource management, in terms of emerging economies, in terms of green energy. And when India came up with the tagline Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future. So most of our conversation got divided under three heads. So when we say one earth, all these sustainable development goals, health, education, green energy, etc. got fitted into one earth as to how we have to better the atmosphere of the earth so that everybody's interdependence is on the climate change, green hydrogen, availability of fertilizers, usage of organic fertilizers, etc., food, all that fell under one earth. One family. So women-led development was discussed for the first time in G20, and India started this particular conversation. And now it seems that after India gives the baton to Brazil for holding the next G20 presidency, women-led development and empowerment of women is going to be a permanent subject of G20, which will go to the credit of India that India introduced this for the first time. And in this particular vertical, we talked about education, health, and food security. All this fell under one family. One future. Now future cannot be there until unless we have technology which is people friendly, technology which is inclusive, technology which serves the purpose of greater human cause, cyber security, and in the first, we also talked, for the first time, we talked about cyber security and narco-terrorism. This was not the subjects which were discussed earlier. So this particular G20 had many firsts. Many firsts. In those many firsts was one biggest first, and that is getting African Union to be part of G20. For the first time ever, the African Union was involved as part of G20 So that's how important Global South became. That people who are going to be impacted the most by the economic policies need to be heard, need to be brought on the same table. And the best part was when African Union's name was announced by none less than our Prime Minister Modi, it became so important that usually Argentina was the country which will be called first by virtue of letter A, but Africa fell before Argentina. And when African Union was called first as the first member on the table, it was both symbolic and in terms of material implication, it was very, very important, because most of the resources lie with Africa and they are not able to use those resources. So money by the richer countries need to be spent in a manner or invested in a manner that African Union also gets benefited, and with the resources of African Union, the development happens in other parts of the world, and both sides are impacted and benefited out of the processes. I must tell you that for the first time, 28 heads of states participated in G20. Never ever before this number has been achieved by any country so far. 60 cities across the country participated or became the destination for G20 summits, for G20 meetings. And even your state, Andhra Pradesh, was one of them, where 2 such meetings happened in terms of infrastructure. And I remember one of the ambassadors, I will not name him, but he took a picture at the Vizag beach and put it on the net saying, "This is not California, this is Vizag." So it makes all of us proud. I may not come from Andhra Pradesh, I may come from Delhi, but Andhra Pradesh, people of Andhra Pradesh are mine. I mean, we belong to each other. We all are Indians, and if something good happens in any part of the country, it makes us all very, very proud. I must say the success of G20, especially after post-pandemic, this was one biggest event of this nature, where so many flights landed in Delhi, where so many protocols had to be kept in order, where so many heads of states with their entourage were taken to their respective destinations. So many, more than 200 meetings across the country is what has already taken place. So state governments, center, secretariat, everyone working together for the well-being of the nation is what G20 showcased. Every Indian was proud of being part of that particular event which country was hosting. And the best part is, normally what I've heard from the outsiders, from people representing other countries, wherever G20 events happened, there were people protesting outside those venues, locally, domestically, in those countries. First time ever in the history of G20, they found in India there was not a single protest. And Prime Minister made it clear from day one that this is about Jan Bhagidari. This is about people's participation. This is about nation coming together to showcase what strength of India is in a very democratic manner, and democracy will be the foundation of hosting G20, no matter which governments run which states. We are all one when it comes to national pride. That was the message of G20, and I'm very clear that that message was taken very positively by the world at large. And I remember in the center, we were asked just few hours before or one day before the actual summit where heads of states were meeting, where people were asking whether there will be a joint declaration. And everybody, not just people within the country, but outside the country, were sitting with their baits that probably there will not be a joint declaration. And I remember being asked that. And obviously, one did not know what's going to happen. And the method which was devised earlier was just kept aside because at the level of heads of states, Prime Minister Modi's leadership was commended by one and all. And everyone came together in favor of India to bring a joint statement. And that joint statement sent out such a strong message that the kind of affection and the kind of importance every country gave to India. Everybody wanted India's presidency to become a success, and we had put our heart and soul into it. So the money which usually, the last big event which India hosted before G20, we've had BRICS, we've had African Union Summit at the level of, from MEA perspective. From the infrastructure perspective, I can only think of Commonwealth Games. And I remember during Commonwealth Games, all kind of scams and things that took place. G20 was a cleaner slate. And we did work on infrastructure. We did develop our infrastructure. Your state hosted 2 conferences on infrastructure. The road, I'm coming after more than 10 years, and I know this central road was in a bad shape when I came last. It is done. It is done very well. And the kind of money central government has spent on road infrastructure across the country, particularly in your state, I would say you have benefited with the work of central government to the tune that earlier you would have had 4,000 plus kilometers of road. Today you have more than 9,000 kilometers of road. So more than double roads is what you have received within this span ever since Prime Minister Modi became the Prime Minister. Even in terms of airports, we can all see the development which has happened at the airports. Number of airports each state has got, number of helipads which have been developed, is all happened in 9.5 years. 9.5 years, the emphasis has been on inclusion, building infrastructure, working on technology. I'm sure everybody in Andhra Pradesh would be proud of what ISRO has done, would be proud of landing of Chandrayaan on the moon and Aditya L1. The kind of power, the kind of strength, the kind of scientific know-how we have showcased to the world that this is what India is all about. Many things have happened in terms of even Har Ghar Nal Se Jal, so bringing water to every household, giving clean fuel to the women in rural area. Even there the numbers were abysmal. When we came to power in 2014, I still remember and recount that number. About 12 crore gas connections existed across the country. And in those 12 crore connections, most of the connections were based only in urban areas. The rural areas did not have any gas connection. We changed that equation. We gave clean fuel to the women who were spending days working on collecting fuel for their household.